there's a kind of high that you get when you finish a project. And I am still a weekish, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less later, I am still riding that high. And I wanted to talk about writing this particular project, how it came to be, what happened, and everything in between, and kind of talk about how it's kind of sort of not exactly reshaping my writing process moving forward. So let's go ahead and get into all that and talk about writing projects. I don't even know what this video is going to be. So let's just have a chat. So go ahead and grab a drink, grab a snack, whatever it is you want to do. Get comfy clothes on, get comfy, and let's talk about just writing and how it's so odd and strange and everything in between. So let's get going. Hey Dragonlings, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Sky. I'm a fantasy author who typically writes paranormal romance under the name SD Higgis, except for the most recent project I finished was a contemporary romance. And that's one of the things I want to talk about today. September 22nd through the 28th, I want to believe is the dates. I cannot remember the dates off the top of my head, and of course I don't have anything at hand to like reference to double check my information. So I can't tell you for certain what the actual dates were, but I will put them on screen. I've got lots of space here to put them on screen. I'm trying to like make sure there's no vehicle license plates in the images while we're chit-chatting. So the 22nd through the 28th, I believe is the dates, was the 7-day book challenge. And for those who don't know, the 7-day book challenge is this writing challenge that I do 3 times a year on the 3rd month of every quarter for the first 3 quarters of the year. That the idea is to write a project in 7 days. That can be a poem, a short story, a novella, a novel. It's completely up to you. You create your word count, but the idea is to start and finish that project in 7 days. And for the past couple of times I've done this, I have been working on short stories, which is not a big deal. This time I had a novella that I planned to work on. That plan did not work out so well, for a couple of different reasons. The first of which was that by the time we started the 7-day book challenge, I was actually in the middle of a Procrasti-Project is what I'm going to call it. And this particular project was one where I was trying to update I was trying to recreate and refill a spreadsheet that I had where I keep a list of character names I've used. And this is both first names and surnames. And the reason I try to keep this chart up to date is because of the fact that I have a tendency when I need like a random character for a character is going to be mentioned once or twice, or like a family member of a character, again, who's only going to be mentioned once or twice because it's like, who are you related to? This is my mom, blah, blah, blah. This is my dad, blah, blah, blah. I tend to use a lot of the same names over and over and over again. So I wanted to keep a chart because I don't really want to do that, because I don't want anyone who reads my books in the future to be like, wait, I thought this character in this book was this character, what? And like be confused thinking that the character's the same person, when in reality it was just me and I'm too stupid to find a new name. So and the spreadsheet is set up so that when I add a name to it, if it's already been on the spreadsheet, it will highlight. I had a spreadsheet for that. I cannot seem to find said spreadsheet. So stupid me, a couple days before the 7-day book challenge, was like, I'll just go through all of my projects and it will go super fast and I'll be able to add all of my names. It did not go super fast. I was hoping to be finished with it like before the 7-day book challenge started. I started this project like 3 or 4 days before the 7-day book challenge started. And I was like, I will be finished with it before the 7-day book challenge. I was not indeed finished with it before the 7-day book challenge. In fact, actually, I did not finish it until like day 4 of the 7-day book challenge. And I tried so hard to set it aside to work on the 7-day book challenge. And it just did not work. Those projects where you get into your mind and you're like, I have to finish this. The name chart turned out to be one of those projects. My brain would not let me work on anything else until I finished that name chart, which is so stupid because it was something that could do at any time, anywhere, any place. Also, if you're like me and you have hundreds of different projects that you work on and you decide you want to make a name chart, the easiest way to do it is just to open up your documents, read through your documents, and every time a new name gets mentioned, doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter what kind of name it is, whether it's a fantasy name, a real name, doesn't matter. Highlight that fucking name in your document and highlight it in a specific color so that you can makes it easier to find it later on. Because I swear to God, there were some things I read 4 or 5 different times and I was like, I will just remember the name. I did not fucking remember the name. Yeah, it's easier as you're writing. When you if you're doing it as you're writing, the first time you introduce a new character and the first time their name is on the paper, highlight it and put it in that color. It makes it so much easier to find later. I know for the future me is going to be doing this. So when I am editing, I highlight in yellow and I highlight in like pink. The normal highlighter colors when you get a 4-pack, I think, are yellow, pink, blue, and green. So I don't want to use any of those colors. So I think what I'm going to do is when I highlight a name, and I'm doing that in my document, and I don't mean like with an actual highlighter, I mean like digitally. When I digitally highlight a name, that way when it prints on paper, that's where I'm getting at with this. That way when it prints on paper, it's not one of those highlighter colors. I've got to pick a different name. I might be like picking gray or something. I print in black and white. Actually, that makes the most sense. I'll probably highlight in gray because when it prints in black and white, it'll remain that color. Anyways, my point is, with saying all this, is that this task took a lot longer than it should have because I had to keep reading through documents to find where I mentioned a name maybe once or twice. I have so many highlighted names on this chart, it's not even funny. And like for the projects that are not published yet, so easy to change them. I'll be like, man, I really like this name. Especially like there's a couple times where I've used the same name for main characters and I was just like, oh, that's definitely not allowed. It was like with projects I completely forgot about. Some of which will probably never get published, but that's not the point. I want characters in different projects, especially main characters, to have different names. And I've got like 5 or 6 iterations of Michael. Now, one of those iterations is in a published one, and that one has to stay. Because that one was a direct reference. That story was written right around the same time that someone, my husband and I knew, there was actually 2 people. One is my husband's grandfather. And in fact, actually the name, when it was mentioned in the story, is a reference to his grandfather. And I purposely had that in there because I was writing that project the same. It's for those who don't know, it's in my Damned and Dangerous Quartet. I don't remember if it's in book 2 or 3. 2 is published, 3 is not. There is a reference to a new burial site. She visits graveyards because she sees spirits. There is a reference when she goes to the graveyard and she was like, huh, there's a new grave. And it's literally because I wrote the story the same year he passed away. My husband's grandfather, and his name was Michael. So like that mentioning of the name will forever stay there because that is literally how I chose to immortalize his grandfather, in the fact that she notices there's a new gravestone and it's got the name Michael attached to it. So like that one I can't change. We also, one of my husband's best friends passed away in 2019. I cannot remember the exact date. I know it was before we moved, and we did his memorial Halloween the year before we moved. So yes, 2020. No, yeah, because we moved in 2021. So it had been 2020. And one of his best friends passed away. He ended up having a heart attack and he passed away on the way to the hospital. But really scary time in our lives because he and I were the same age at the time, and he was only 30. So that was a scary time in our lives where we were like, holy shit, we're not immortal. I think that's when it actually hit us. You know how teenagers and young people think they're immortal and then all of a sudden you get hit with death? Yeah. One of his best friends dying, someone that I graduated with at the age of 30, was our awakening that we're not immortal kind of thing. And it wasn't funny. It's not a funny thing. It's just one of those realizations that's like, oh shit kind of thing. But his name was also Michael. So like I have another story where that's how I chose to immortalize that Michael. And so like I've used names to immortalize people. And in those cases, I'm not going to change those names no matter how many times they're used. But like for some reason, I have used the name Brian in like 5 different stories, and that makes absolutely no sense. Like none. So that's things that this chart pointed out to me that I was like, oh, oh, okay. And I am going to have to go back through and I need to figure out I don't know if this is possible. It probably is. I am not huge. I do not like Google Sheets, which is what I'm using, but I do not have access to Microsoft Excel at the moment. So I am using Google Sheets, and it is a pain in the ass to highlight things, because in Microsoft Excel, you go to the drop down, there is one that says remove duplicates, but there's also one that says highlight duplicates, and it literally says highlight duplicates. Google Sheets, no, you have to put in a damn formula, and I have to look up the formula every single fucking time in order to make it work, which is annoying as fuck, by the way. But the other thing is that I need to figure out if I can tweak that formula so that I can change it so that it highlights if a name is mentioned more than once, if a name is mentioned more than twice, if a name is mentioned more than 3 times, so that the more often a name is mentioned, up to like 5 times, so, since I know Brian is the name I've got for... I don't know why I use Brian 5 times, but apparently I've used it 5 times in 5 different stories that are unrelated to each other. My point is that I want to tweak the formula and see if I can change it so that the more times a name is mentioned, it'll change colors. So like 5 times will obviously be red, because that's way too many fucking times. So that's the deal with that. Where was I going with that rant? I don't even remember, but mostly it was just the fact that I could not leave this project. I tried. I tried working on a couple of different projects. I tried working on the project I was planning on working for the 7-day book challenge. I could not, for the life of me, until I finished that chart. It's done. It's up to date. That is the most we're getting out of it at the moment. So, anyways, moving on. What project was I supposed to work on for the 7-day book challenge? Howling Good Time. This is a paranormal romance novella where a woman who works for the Chamber of Commerce and has helped put this marathon run together goes on this marathon run, and it's during Halloween, so there are volunteers along the run who are dressed up in costume and like supposed to be scaring the runners and stuff. And she ends up getting scared by the werewolf. And she is listening to music while she's doing this run because it helps her focus and stuff. And she's listening to a song that's not safe for work. And so when the werewolf scares her, she straight up looks at him and says, "Aw, who's a good boy?" In that kind of tone, in that sexual, flirtatious tone. Immediately gets embarrassed, takes off. And what she doesn't realize is the werewolf she did this to was not a man dressed in costume. He is an actual wolf. And there's this theory. There was a show I used to watch a long time ago called Dark Angel, for those who know, where they were genetically altered humans, supposed to be like superhumans, and it's a whole thing. And at one point they introduced this character. I do not remember the character's name is. I think it started with a J. But he's a human hybrid. He was one of their other scientific attempts at a superhuman, and he's got animalistic features, so he looks like a beast. I think he was crossed with a lion, so he's got lion features on his face. He's got a mane, I believe. It's an older show. I could be misremembering things, so don't quote me on any of this. I just remember he wasn't human, and he stays hidden because he doesn't look human, and he doesn't want to be found by this government agency again now that he's free. And so there is one night of the year that he can go out and about and be seen as normal, and that is Halloween. So because everyone will assume he's just wearing a costume. And I was like, I pulled on that theory, and I was like, this guy is going to come in his true werewolf form to this marathon to scare people, and no one's going to bat an eyelid because they're going to think he is dressed in costume. And so that was the theory I went with. And this all started because of my own experience with the fun run, because this is exactly what I did. I participate in I can't even show my shirt. This is this year's zombie fun run. And it is hosted by the Chamber of Commerce, and basically they have a route from the high school to one of the bars in town where it's 3,000 kilometers. And along the route, they have a short run for kids, and they have the full 3K run. The short run for kids ends at the bowling alley, where the bowling alley has this haunted house that's like PG related, and specials for parents and kids to play bowling. and then the 3K run. And along the route, starting from the bowling alley and going all the way down to the bar, there are different people dressed in various costumes who jump out and scare you. And last year, one of them was a werewolf. And last year, I was listening to music because the girls decided to take off and walk with their friends, or run with their friends, actually. They ran with their friends. And I don't run unless I'm being chased by actual real-life zombies or a serial killer. And even then, I'll probably just let the serial killer kill me. My point is that I was actually walking and listening to music because I was by myself and I was just like, yeah, it's fine. And I was just having a grand old time. And I was listening to music that was not safe for work when the werewolf jumped out and scared me. And I had to bite my tongue in order to make sure I didn't say what I told you that this character is going to say. So the scenario that I described that is the storyline of this story is something that almost happened to me in real life. And I had to bite my tongue to make sure I didn't do it. I am a little sad that this year there was no fun run. Or no, there was a fun run. I don't know what I'm talking about. There was no werewolf in the fun run this year. Pennywise made his usual appearance. I've taken pictures with Pennywise before. There was a couple other characters, like Georgie had his red balloon. Jason, there was a guy dressed up. I think he's from The Hills Have Eyes. It was a guy in some kind of mask. I couldn't tell what it was. And carrying a chainsaw, who followed people around with his chainsaw running. Hilarious, great fun. But there was like different costumes that I recognized, but no werewolf this year, so that made me a little sad. Also, if you didn't know, I'm filming this much later. It is we did the 7-day book challenge. I said the dates already for the 7-day book challenge. I'll have them again on the screen. It is October 12th as I'm filming this. So it's been a couple weeks. But all that to say is that's the project I was supposed to be working on. I think it's going to be a novella. I think it's going to be like somewhere between 30 to 40,000 words long, 50,000 max. And that's still novella length because for me, novels are anywhere from 16 to 90K. I'm still thinking it's going to be a novella. I don't know for certain at this point. But my whole plan was to work on that project. And then because of the procrastination project, I could not work on it. And when I finally did finish that Procrasti-Project and I started working on the 7-day book challenge. 7-day book challenge project, which was 4 days into this, by the way. I started outlining said project. I had a rough outline, a rough idea of the story, but like I wanted to figure out the full end of it before I actually started writing so I could go and just write it. And I got pretty far. I know the main female characters. I know her entire plot arc line. I know what's going to happen. I know how the inciting incident is obviously when she calls him a good boy. And all the way to the point where they get together as a couple. It's paranormal romance. You know they're going to get together as a couple. Sorry if that's a spoiler. Anyways. But what I didn't know was his. I knew he was in town. He's a new, it's a small town romance, by the way. So he is new to town. He is there for a specific reason. In my head, he was there to investigate something. I didn't know what that something was, but he's in town to investigate something. And I knew that when she calls him a good boy, like that was going to trigger something in his brain. He's like, I need to know who the fuck this woman is. And I knew that I wanted to play around with the fated mates trope. So if you are unaware, the fated mates trope means that two people are destined to be together. And what's really become popular right now in paranormal romance is rejected fated mates, where there are two people who are fated mates and they reject each other and then they either come back together or like one of them has a new mate after they get rejected. And I kind of wanted to play around, not with the rejected mates, because I have no interest. I'm sorry, if two people are destined to be together, why are we ripping them apart? Like, they have got to be compatible in some way. There's no reason for them to reject each other. However, I love the idea, especially like in this case where it's a mortal woman and a werewolf, of fated mates, but the werewolf feels the connection and the mortal doesn't. I love that trope. I eat that shit up. I love it when a fantastical creature, supernatural creature, such as a werewolf, has a fated mate, and they know who that person's their fated mate. Like, it is instant, almost like insta-love, almost like insta-love, except for, like, it's not feeling based. It's just that you have that knowledge that this is the person you belong with. You don't know why, you don't know in what capacity, but you know that person belongs in your life. And I love the idea of fated mates not necessarily being a couple. I know mates suggests that it is a couple, but like soulmates. I am the kind of person who believes that everyone has a soulmate. That soulmate is not always a romantic partner or a sexual partner. Your best friend could be your soulmate. Your child, that's an iffy relationship in my opinion. But like your family member, whether it's your brother, your sister, your mother, your aunt, your uncle, child, doesn't matter. I feel like everyone has a soulmate, someone who just clicks with you in every single way, who is your yin to your yang. And again, it's not always a romantic or sexual way. And that's the way I think about fated mates, is that they have this connection with each other. It's not necessarily romantic, it's not necessarily sexual. It is usually used that way in stories. But I love the idea of playing with the soulmate trope and the fated mate trope and making it not sexual, making it not romantic. And I'm not saying that in this case the people aren't going to be a couple, but I like it more as a jumping off point. Like, there's that knowledge, that instant knowledge that is your person or that is your partner in some capacity. You just don't know if it's meant to be like, is that going to be my best friend? Is that going to be my lover? Is that going to be the parent of my child, future children? Like, because again, it goes back to you can be in love with someone and not necessarily have children with them kind of thing. So I love the idea of playing with that trope with this story. And I knew in this particular case, that was what was going to happen. She was going to say, "Oh, good boy. Who's a good boy?" And he was just going to, "That's my soulmate." And I don't know in what capacity she's my soulmate. And so, like, the whole point of his arc is the fact that he's got this investigation going on. And because she's mortal and she did not feel that instant connection, he has got to convince her before he leaves town that they belong together in some capacity. So, like, he's got to convince her, "You're my fated mate. You are my person. We belong together in some capacity." But I could not, for the life of me, figure out what their actual I knew what their connection was going to be. I couldn't figure out how to, like, bring him to terms with what their connection was going to be at first. I finally did figure that out while working on the 7-day project. I spent basically the next 3 days of the 7-day book challenge just brainstorming different ideas for this story. Because again, I knew what was going to be the inciting incident. It was her literally calling him a good boy. And I knew some details moving on. Also, I knew that this was going to be a more spicy book. I don't write a lot of spice, but there was 2 scenes that I cannot, for the life of me, get out of my fucking head where this story is concerned. And both of them are extremely spicy. So, like, I knew there was going to be spice in this book. It's not going to be my usual no spice book. There's going to be less violence, less cussing, more spice. And usually it's the reverse. Usually I have lots of violence, some cussing, and no spice. In this case, there's going to be some spice, less cussing, no violence. Well, little violence. So, yeah. And then, I could not, for the life of me, for the rest of the 7-day book challenge, figure out what the fuck this guy was investigating. In fact, actually, I have tried to film this video a couple of times, and I've tried to talk about this story idea a couple of times in various vlog clips that I've deleted them all. But I tried filming this video first on my, like, the vlogging camera that I bought. I talked like this for 30 minutes. And it stopped filming, and I never noticed because it still said it was recording. I wasn't paying attention to the timestamp and what it said. it stopped filming after 15 minutes. Now, I know with my phone camera, it'll pop up a little message saying that my file limit size has been reached. In fact, actually, this clip is the second of 2 filming clips for this reason. It'll tell me my file size has been reached, and it'll start a new video clip, basically. That might be the case with this camera, but when I went back and tried and watched over the video footage that I had done, after the first 15 minutes, there's like a whole section of me talking that is missing. And I don't know where it is, because then there's another video clip that basically continues on after that 5-minute stop. It's like it stopped filming, thought about it, oh shit, she never pressed stop, and started filming again, kind of thing. During that clip, while filming that clip, I came up with the epiphany of what he's in town investigating. He's not in town investigating something new. He's investigating his own werewolf turning. When I originally started plotting out this story last year, when I came up with the story idea, I knew this was going to be a man who was scarred, and I had a detailed description of what he looks like. He is scarred across his face, and one of his ears, I think it's his right ear, but his ear is missing. And what originally in that particular story, when I was starting to write down the story idea, I didn't have the idea that he was actually going to be a werewolf. He was just a man dressed up in a werewolf costume. The paranormal aspect came in later this year, actually, when I started replotting it for the 7-day book challenge. And then I was like, oh shit, that's like the perfect excuse for him to be a werewolf. Like, that's a perfect way for me to make it paranormal. But last year, when I was first writing about it, he had a scar across his face. His ear was missing. Part of his ear was missing. It's not the first time I've had a character with an ear missing. If you've read Puck's Choice, you know what I'm talking about. I apparently like making characters who have missing body parts, and the body part is their fucking ear. I just realized that. Anyways, and it's not one of those things that's like odd, except for like how often it's happened. It's odd kind of thing. It was like, okay. But anyways, part of his ear is missing. He's got a scar across his face. And in the original storyline, he tells the kid, when the kid asks about it, he's like, I got in the gunfight with the guy and the other guy won, kind of thing. And I'm like, what if, hear me out, what if the reason he's a werewolf is because he was a normal cop, he was investigating a disturbance, and he went into a dark shed, and the thing that burst out and attacked him as it was trying to escape said dark shed just happened to be a werewolf, and he is scarred and his ear is missing, not from getting the wrong end of a gunfight, but because he got attacked by a werewolf trying to escape from him. And what if his investigation that brought him to town is him looking for said werewolf? And that's the whole idea now. But again, this was not during the 7-day challenge. This was like literally a couple of days ago that idea came in. So 7-day book challenge comes around. The first 4 days, I have futzed around with my Procrasti-Project, and I had plans to write Howling Good Time, which was the paranormal romance dealing with the charity run and the werewolf who was actually the man in the werewolf costume that was actually that's actually a werewolf. That's going to get confusing. All that to say, I could not figure out what was stumping me on this story. I knew he was investigating something. I could not figure out what he was investigating. That answer did not come until well after the 7-day book challenge ended. Now, before the 7-day book challenge started, anyone who's been around my channel for a while knows that 99.9% of my ideas come from dreams. I am a very vivid dreamer in the fact that I will remember entire scenarios, and I don't mean like small segments of dreams. I mean dreams that seem to span over years. You know that phrase that says you can live a lifetime in a moment? That kind of thing, where during the dream I have memories of past events. Whichever character I am in the body of during the dream, I have memories of past events. I have recollections of emotions and stuff like that. That being said, I do not dream in color. I dream in shadow puppets. Like, everything is black and white and shades of gray and sepia. But I know looking at particular people and things, what the colors are supposed to be. Like, I know that apple is supposed to be red. I know that the werewolf has dark hair. I know he has yellow eyes, kind of thing. I do not dream in color. I do not daydream in color. I do not imagine in color. I like to say shadow puppets because that's the easiest way to describe it, but it's basically black and white. I see shadows and silhouettes of things that are supposed to be there. I have memories of things that have happened. That's just how I dream. That's just how I daydream. That's how I dream. I can't really describe it beyond that. That is the best way to describe it, and even that's not accurate because, like I said, it's mostly like shadows. I know what is supposed to be there, but I don't see what is supposed to be there. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. Anyways, before the 7-day book challenge even started, I had a dream. Sorry, tangled. Anyways, all this to say, the dream I had was about a specific scene. And in this scene, this girl is at a concert. It's like her favorite band. She has a crush because all girls have a crush on at least one band member. She has a crush on a band member. And so she's like nervous to meet the band. And she's even more nervous to meet that particular band member. And while she's meeting the band, one of the band members kisses her randomly for publicity stunt. And it tells the reporters that are there, it tells the press, yeah, we've been dating for a while. I just decided not to keep it hidden all of a sudden. She's never met these people. Also, it's not the band member she likes. It's a different one. So, in the dream, that's legit the entire clip of the dream, except for there's a smaller section later that I had. You know how sometimes dreams like skip to like a couple days later? A few moments later. Anyways, it did some kind of time skip thingy. I think I started waking up and then went back to sleep kind of thing. Not the point. The point is that the second part of the dream was that the band and the girl and the band's manager are now like arguing with each other like, how do we fix this? And the band manager says, well, now you got to date for a couple of weeks and then break up publicly. And so she's fake dating this guy who is the band member. Or like she's supposed to date the band member who is not the one she likes when she has a crush on a different band member. So anyways, all that to say, that idea had been percolating in my head since like 2 days before the 7-day book challenge started. And because I had the Procrasti-Project, because I already had my project picked, I was telling my brain, I was like, no, we are not going to work on this. We don't even like this. This is contemporary. We cannot turn this paranormal. Day 4 happened. I finished up the Procrasti-Project. I could not for the life of me figure out how to get past this jumping point with the Howling good time. And so I was like, fine, you win. We'll do it. And I started writing. I started plotting out the... Jesus. Okay. It is a different day. It is... I don't know. I have been filming this in clips here and there as I can, basically, as I felt like it, mostly. And it's just been difficult because I didn't script this video first, so like I'm just talking about things as I think of them, kind of thing. But sorry about the delay. Where I last left off, I was talking about the fact that 4 days into the 7-day book challenge, I finally decided to work on this random story idea I'd had. And the deal is, and it wasn't even day 4, it was actually day 5. I didn't even realize that until I was looking at my numbers chart just now. I finished the Procrasti-Project. I didn't have any ideas on where to go with the project that I was supposed to be working on for the 7-day book challenge. And so, like, in my brain, I was like, fine, well, I have this idea. Let me go ahead and just knock out what I can of this before the idea is like, okay, I'm done, and then move on, which is usually what happens. Usually when I get a random story idea, I can write down that little bit of idea I have, get it out of my brain, and move on. That's usually how it goes. That was not the case this time. This time, I started just brainstorming, and at the end of my brainstorming, I had a full outline for a novella, novel, whatever, a story, and it was 2,500 words of just brainstorming. And then I started writing. I did all the brainstorming during my live stream for the 7-day book challenge, and then during my lunch break at work, during my breaks at work, I started actually writing the story, and I got about 2,000 words. And then the same thing happened the next day. I wrote during my stream, I wrote during my break, and I wrote in like little pockets of time here and there in between, and I got 9,000 words. And then day 7 of the 7-day book challenge happened, and we were doing a 12-hour marathon from Saturday into Sunday, which is where part of the 9,000 words came from that as well, because I work Friday into Saturday morning. I did laundry at the laundromat. I typed during while I was waiting on laundry. I went home. I typed some more. That's how. And then we had the 12-hour marathon, which is how I got part of the 9K that I got. And then Sunday rolls around. The 28th is the last day of the 7-day book challenge. We crossed the second half of our 12-hour marathon was into Sunday. Like, we went until like 6, 7 a.m. my time. I can't remember which. And then I continued writing all throughout the day. And I wrote over 10,000 words. So across all 3 of those days, let's see if I can get that to pull up. I wrote 21,687 words on a first draft. And I was in love with this story. Is it the greatest in the world? No. Is there a lot of problems? Absolutely. But I was in love with the story, and I was like, I want to finish this. The next day, no more 7-day book challenge. 7-day book challenge is done. And I took a break. I don't even remember why I took a break at this point. It's been too long. I just remembered that I had other things to do. I had other things to wrap up. And so I was working on those things. I was focusing on those things. I don't think they were related to writing at all. And so, like, I didn't end up doing anything with this story, with any story. And I was like, oh, that must mean that my ambition to work on this story is gone. I was wrong. The next day, which was Tuesday, September 30th, I wrote over 3,000 words. October 1st, I wrote a negative amount because I deleted a bunch of stuff and rewrote stuff. And so I had negative 69, which makes me giggle. If you know, you know. October 2nd, I wrote over 3,000 words. October 3rd, I wrote just under 4,500 words, and I finished the first draft. So I wrote a total of 32,394 words across 8 days, with only 7 of those days actually being writing days, because I took that one day off following the 7-day book challenge for a break. Yep. So in a way, I completed the 7-day book challenge, just not on the dates that the 7-day book challenge was supposed to be run, because I did write a book with 7 days of writing. And I finished it. And part of the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I think there are a fuck ton of factors that helped with this. Part of it was that I was super excited about the story. I don't even know why. It's a boy band romance. It's contemporary. Like, I don't know what it is about this story that made me want to write it. It bit me in the ass and would not let go, basically, is what it comes down to. And there was a lot of things that I was having fun playing with. It was a subversion on the fake dating trope that is in a lot of stories these days that I like, because I do like the fake dating trope. I love the idea of pretending to date someone and then you falling in love with them. And I knew that in this particular case, they were going to fake date, but they were not going to fall in love with each other. And I think the other thing that helped is that as I was writing this story and I was developing these characters and I was developing the relationship between all these characters, I realized I had enough storyline, not for just one more book, not 2 more books, but actually 3 more books. Like, I had the potential. There's 5 band members. I had the potential to do as many books in the series as would get all of the band members a love interest, basically. Did I set out to do that? Absolutely not. I am so tired of writing series. I wanted to write a bunch of standalones. Not gonna lie. And, like, in my head, I'm still telling myself this is a standalone, even though it's fucking not. There were a lot of factors into the reasons why I think this one worked. And I think the reason I'm so giddy about it, even weeks later, like, I am now, I don't remember when I last recorded, but this clip is being recorded on the 19th of October. We are near the end of October, and I am still, to this day, giddy about the story. And there's a couple factors why. The first is that this is the first time all year, probably in a couple years, honestly, that I have completed the first draft of something that is not a short story. And while, yes, 32,000 words is not a novel, it's still a completed draft of something that I know once it's finished, once it's wrapped up, once it's completed, once it's done, will not be a short story. I mean, 32,000 words, it's already longer than a short story. It's novella length now. And I fully suspect that when I flesh this out and I actually add some meat to the bones of this story, it'll be somewhere between 90,000 to 100,000 words. Like, it's going to be a fucking novel. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm so giddy about this, is because it's been so long since I've completed the first draft of a novel. I have completed short stories. I've even completed some novellas. Maybe. Actually, I don't think I have. I think the only thing I've completed recently as a first draft is short stories in the past several years. I don't think I've actually completed the first draft of a novel since 2020. Now that I think about it. Maybe 2021. I will have to actually look through my records. I'll put something on the screen that shows how many novels I've completed since 2021. Because I don't think the answer's many. And then I'll put on the screen how many short stories I have completed since 2021. 2020, 2021. I'll have that graphic on the screen. Editing Sky, remember to do that. So I think that's part of the reason I am so giddy about this story even weeks later, even though it's not a genre I have any intention of publishing anytime soon. I have done another video series where I talked about all the pen names I want to write under and what genres will be under those pen names and what book ideas I have for those pen names. This one wasn't on the list because this one's brand new. I think that excitement for a new project helped. I think that finishing something from start to finish and knowing it's like the first draft at least is done has been a huge factor. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it. I just know that I am still to this day, weeks later, giddy as fuck that I finished a story. Like, I love that for me. Now, I wrote down, because I was journaling about all my feelings about this particular project. So I wrote down all the things that I think helped me get through this project. And what I'm learning from this project is that in a lot of ways, I have gone back to basics. And what I mean by that is that, okay, so I have mentioned a couple times that I used to get a lot more writing done. It feels like I used to get a lot more writing done as far as like start to finish and completing things before the girls were born. And that's not quite true, because even after they were born, I got a lot of stuff done. But it feels like in the past few years, especially since 2020, and I know COVID and everything that has happened ever since COVID has not helped. Like, I get that that's a factor I need to think about when I think about the fact that I haven't been completing stuff. Like, I haven't been finishing stories. I have started so many, and I've just not finished them. Like, a lot of them are actually really close to being complete, and I just haven't finished them. So in my head, I was like, one of the things I've been like thinking about lately is like, what did I used to do especially like when I was in school, when I wrote all the fucking time, and what did I used to do that I would actually complete stories? Like, I wrote all the way from beginning to end, maybe not quickly, but I felt like I finished more stories than I do these days. These days I write a whole bunch of stories and I finish maybe 1 out of 20. That's not a lot. And so I was trying to think about all the things that I used to do that I do not do now. And I think the major one I have to think about, and I think this one is definitely the one that affects my writing the most, is, yes, I have mentioned multiple times that writing for me is a hobby. And I was like, and I've hit that point in my life where I'm like, if I'm going to write something, I might as well get paid for it. I might as well publish it and let other people be able to read it, and they get to pay me to read stuff that I write. Like, that is the mindset I have now, but it didn't used to be, because obviously this was all before I knew that, authors could publish their works. Like, oh my God, the concept. Anyways, when I was in high school, I didn't write for anyone. The stories were all for me. They were stories that I wanted to read that I couldn't find in mainstream media. They were stories that I was interested in, that had characters that were doing weird things, or like worlds that were strange but similar to ours. Like, I didn't used to write stories for anyone but me. Like, that, they were my guilty pleasure, and they were just so that I could go back and read them. And that is, I think, factor number one, is that in the back of my head these days, I am still writing stories that I enjoy. I am still writing stories for me. But in the back of my head, I do have that little voice that says, how can I market this? Who else is going to read it? How do I perfect this so that it is legible to other people? Because when I was writing back then, I didn't give a fuck if there was a plot hole, because no one else was going to see it but me. It was literally just for me. And like, it didn't matter if the storyline didn't make sense. It didn't matter if I hadn't done my research. It didn't matter if the things that I was writing about weren't actually possible, or if the world building made absolutely no sense. There's magic in the world, but we can't explain it. It's just from a magical, mystical being. So what? Kind of thing. And I think that that's another factor, is the fact that I didn't care how realistic my fictional stories was, because A, it was fiction. It shouldn't matter. And because I was writing just to, basically there was characters and situations that I wanted to see played out that I wasn't finding in mainstream media. And I wrote them myself, kind of thing. And I didn't care if magic fixed everything, if everyone could be cured with magic, if everything could be, you know, wrapped up in a tiny bow because of the fact that they killed the bad guy. Like, it didn't have to make sense. And I think that was one of the best parts about it. But while I was journaling, I also wrote down a list of everything else that I think helped with this particular story in making it make sense. In helping me complete the story from beginning to end. Because again, this is something I've been trying to figure out for months. Or actually, honestly, probably years. And I am tired of getting like burnt out to the point where I don't want to complete anything. I haven't been wanting to publish anything. Like, the moment I say I want to publish something, all of a sudden I don't have a desire to write it, like, at all. And I was like, what am I doing wrong that I no longer want to write stuff? And I'm trying to get back to the basics of what I used to do. And so, like, that's what I journaled about. I have a list here of things that I think helped with this particular story that I'm going to try to implement going forward. That some of it is stuff that I used to do, some of it's new stuff that I think will help exponentially in making sure that I finish stuff. Not just start it, but actually finish stuff. So, there's 10 things on this list, and there's actually another one I needed to add, but I didn't add it onto this list. Okay, first is body doubling. We've been doing sprints. I started this project when we were doing the 7-day book challenge, so I was doing daily live streams. We had the 12-hour marathon, which I did with Stephanie, and there was people in the comments. During my lunch breaks at work, JC and I were sprinting together, like, body doubling, pairing up with someone. When I was in high school, I didn't have that. I was just on my own, usually writing in boring classes where I had already covered the subject. I could do the homework in my sleep, kind of thing. And I was just writing because I was passing time, waiting for the bell to ring to go to the next class. That was probably just as boring, if not less so, if not more challenging. So body doubling, I think, is a big factor that has helped. Enthusiasm for the project. I've mentioned that I really wanted to write this. I don't know why I wanted to write it. I don't know what was so appealing about it to me, but the fact that I was like, this is going to be so much fun to write. It's going to be, and I think part of it is the fact of the trope it was, and the subversion of said trope. Like, to me, I had a blast writing this fake relationship where this girl was, it was a subversion of two different tropes. The first of which was the fake dating, because in most fake datings, she gets with the person she's fake dating. And I knew that wasn't going to happen in this one. And the other trope that I think is a subversion is a love triangle, because she was supposed to be fake dating this guy and pretending to be in love with him. All the while, she had a crush on another one in the band. Tell me that isn't some kind of sick love triangle without it actually being a love triangle. And I think it was the subversion of the tropes that made it so fun to write. Like, this project was straight up just fun. Like, it didn't have to make any bloody sense. It was just pure fun. And I think that helped so much. The third was that it was fully plotted. I did that outline. I wrote 2,500 words. I knew from chapter 1 to chapter I think there was 14 chapters, everything that was going to happen. Like, I knew all of the things that were going to happen. Did I probably have to fill in spots and add more? Yeah. But, like, I had, like, the main portion of the story completely plotted. Done. Full said. I don't even know what I'm talking about now. But, like, it was all planned out. And at the same time, the fourth thing was that it was very simple plotting. I did one sentence plotting, following the kiss. Keep it simple, silly, keep it simple, stupid, whichever way you want to do it. My plotting The original portion of my plotting was literally just a one-sentence description of everything that was going to happen, the main thing that was going to happen in each chapter for 14 chapters. And then the fifth thing was that I kept plots simple-ish. Did I add more plots along the way? Did I weave in story plots that will definitely make it to possible future books? Yes, I did. But that was all stuff that when I was first plotting it out, what I plotted out stuck to one plot, one main arc. I think a lot of what I'll be adding into future drafts of this story is all those smaller plots, all the weavings of those smaller plots. But as far as like plotting out my story and then writing the story, it was one simple plot. The whole story is about this one thing that happened and then going through the motions of fixing it, basically. The sixth thing, I'm holding the notebook so I can't hold up 6 fingers, sorry. So the sixth thing that happened is the fact that it's very similar to Ouran High School Host Club. Now, I did not realize this at first. In fact, actually, I don't think this realization kicked in until I was like on chapter 13. But I realized the further I got into the story and the more I discovered about the characters and the more I discovered about, like, especially the band members, I realized how similar it was to Ouran High School Host Club. Because we have these 5 band members and they all have different personalities. They all are different people. And yet I couldn't help but compare them to the members of the Ouran High School Host Club. Now, Ouran High School Host Club has 6 boys, but the personality traits of all 6 boys are kind of close to 5 different characters. So I realized at that point how similar my men, because they're not boys, they were men in this story, how similar these men were to the personalities of the Ouran High School Host Club members. So now I've got to go back and read Ouran High School Host Club and see how they pulled this off. Because one of the things that I thought was similar as I was writing it and that I didn't realize until I got to chapter 13 or 14, I don't remember, later. I think there was only 14 chapters in the book and it wasn't something I realized until like the last couple of chapters kind of thing. But the main character has interactions with each of the band members, like, individually. And I couldn't help but the reason I think I made that comparison to Ouran High School Host Club is there's these filler episodes where she literally spends one-on-one time with each of the boys from the club. For no other reason than we're exploring their personalities and learning more about them. She spends time with the twins where they get mad at each other because they're trying to differentiate themselves from each other and trying to be different, and she is like the only person who can actually tell them apart without them like dyeing their hair or doing something weird with their clothing styles or stuff like that. There's an episode where one of the members of the club, who's supposed to be like this really mature, intelligent young man, he gets dragged into a situation when he's like half asleep and left and abandoned in a mall, and she just happens to find him and they spend the whole day together while they're trying to figure out what he's even doing there, kind of thing. Like, there's all these filler episodes in both the show, and I think this happens in the manga too. I have the whole manga, but it's been a while since I've read it, so forgive me, anyone who's read it recently, if I'm wrong. But I think it even happens in the manga, that she has all these one-on-one time with these different boys. And as I was writing this story, I realized I was doing the same thing with my main character. Yes, she has all these fake dates with the one band member. Yes, she has a romantic interest in the other band member, but she also spends time with the other 3 band members, one-on-one. So, like, those similarities just stuck out to me. And for those who don't know, I love Ouran High School Host Club. It's like one of my favorite animes, and it's one of my favorite mangas, hence the reason I have the whole collection of it. So I like those similarities. And I think one of the things that I liked is that Ouran High School Host Club is very much a reverse harem. It's not a wide choose. There is, when you get to not in the show, but definitely in the manga, there is definitely an ending. She chooses one of the boys. But the adventure along the way is so much fun. Even if I'm not a huge fan of the person she chooses. He has a really big growth arc, though, so don't get me wrong. It turns out fantastic. Like, it makes sense, but not the point. The point is that she does end up choosing one band member in that show. But it's very much featured as like a sweet reverse harem where all of the boys have crushes on her, even if they don't act on it. So that's why I think some of the inspiration was coming and why it was so much fun. Number 7, I had absolutely no expectations with the story. No plans for publication, no plans to let anyone read it. It was literally for my eyes only, just because it was fun and I wanted to write it. And I think this was one of the biggest factors, because I mentioned earlier that the way I used to write stories is they were just for me. And now in the back of my mind, everything's like, okay, when can I publish this? And I think writing without that back of mind expectation of when will this be ready for publication made it so much easier to actually knock out the words. Because I didn't have that expectation. This was a contemporary romance. Right now I'm only interested in publishing anything that's paranormal romance or urban fantasy or fantasy. Right now I'm focusing on one pen name. So the fact that this was a contemporary romance and I had no interest and I had no desire to add any paranormal elements, and yet I was still writing the story and I didn't have any expectations of when I was going to finish it, didn't have any expectations of when I could edit it, didn't have any expectations of when I was going to publish it. Because those expectations weren't there, it made it so much easier just to let go and write the damn story. Number 8, which actually I just said, get it out. Because of those expectations and the lack of thereof, I didn't care about editing. I didn't care about adding or changing anything along the way. And what I mean by that is, like, if I changed my mind about something, I changed it right then and there, and then I continued writing as if it had existed that way the whole time, ignoring the fact that it's completely different from that point backward. And what I mean by this is that at one point at the beginning of the story, I thought the character had one job. Like, I thought her career was going to be XYZ. And then I get to a certain point, and I was like, but what if it's this? And so, like, I started writing it as if it was that. And then I was like, oh, I don't like this. And so I changed it back. So literally, there's a couple of instances in the story where she's like, I do this for work. And then a short period where she's like, actually, I do this for work. And she doesn't actually say that. I just reveal that that's what she's doing. And then I go back on my word, and I'm like, I changed it back. So when I go back and edit this story, I will have to, make all that match. But as I was writing, I was not going back and, like, editing anything. Like, if I came up with a new and better idea, I just continued it from that point forward as if it had existed that way the entire time from that point back. Helps so much. Again, with the plotting and stuff, I brainstormed the main events in each chapter. After I did that 1-sentence description of each chapter, I went back and kind of fleshed it out a little bit more and did, like, a full paragraph where I added some details and some minor, like, quotes that I thought would work in the story kind of thing. Like, I kept it pretty simple still. It was literally just a paragraph kind of detailing more about what was going to happen in each chapter. But I think having that little bit helped whenever I thought I was getting ready to get stuck. I would just look back at that paragraph explanation of what was going to happen in each chapter and just be like, jog my memory and be like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing, and continue on from there. And then the last thing I have on this list, which is not the last thing at all, is the fact that I didn't research anything. So there's probably a lot of inconsistencies. There's probably a lot of things that are absolutely wrong. There's probably a lot of things that make no sense. And I'm okay with that. Because again, no expectations. I didn't fall into any rabbit holes. I didn't stop to research anything. I was just mentally making notes as I went along, being like, okay, this might be something I need to look into. Or, like, there was, I think in the first chapter, maybe it's later, I didn't know what the setup was supposed to be, like, for a recording studio. And so, like, literally, I'm using different words to mean the same thing, and I have no idea which of those words is correct for literally the same thing. And anyone who reads it will probably be like, what? Isn't this all the same thing? And it's different words with different meanings, but I don't know what I'm actually thinking of in that said story or said instance. So, like, I use all 3 words, and I know one of them is correct, and I know the other 2 are not. I don't know which one it is. So, and I just carried on. I kept going. And then the 11th thing that is not written in there that I think helped a lot is, and this happened, I think it was during the 12-hour marathon that this was brought up. And JC's mentioned this a couple times herself in some of our conversations, so I don't know why I didn't think of it. But she has talked in the past to me about the fact that she is currently listening to a specific song like on repeat. Like it is her jam. It is her I don't know what it's called. Stem. I think that's the word I'm looking for. It's her current stem, where she listens to one song on repeat over and over again. And I got to thinking about it during that conversation. I was like, I used to do that. When I was writing specific stories, I used to put the same song. Actually, it used to be album because I would play CDs in a CD player. I used to put the same album on repeat and listen to that same album over and over and over and over and over again while I was writing a specific story, to the point where like Katie Wismer does this. She associates each different story idea with a different perfume, and so like when she smells that perfume or cologne, she thinks about that particular story. I was doing the same thing but with music, and I would associate different story ideas with different albums. I have not done that in so long. I don't even know when I stopped doing it or why I stopped doing it. But like sometime during the 12-hour marathon, during one of the sprints, we got talking about different songs we like and like how they were our current obsessions, and we were listening to them on repeats for different situations. So I was like, fuck yeah. And I took one of my favorite songs that I mentioned in that live stream, which is Bad Habits by Nerve. I love that song. It is amazing. I will have it linked below if you're interested in checking it out. Music video is very sad actually. But my point is that I turned that song on, I put it on repeat, and that helped so much on those 9,000 and 10,000 days. 9,000 and 10,000 word days. Almost a dollar for some reason. And even now, whenever I write, I have tried to pick a song for each story idea. I've actually, again, I journaled some more, and I was writing down songs that remind me of various story ideas, and those are what I'm listening to on repeat while working on those story ideas, or they will be what I listen to on repeat while working on those different story ideas, just to test out this theory, because it worked with this one. Putting Bad Habits on repeat anytime I went to go write just made it so that I got into the mindset of writing that story so much faster. And what I mean by that is that there are some people out there who, when they're getting ready to write, they have to have their desk a certain way. They have to be using certain writing tools. They have to meet certain criteria. And a lot of them, like the one thing that I wish I could do, but haven't been able to for a while just because of where I'm currently sitting to write, when I'm currently sitting to write and all that fun jazz, is like, I love the idea of lighting a candle and that jogging my brain and being like, oh, it's time to write and get stuff done. And I haven't been able to do that. Instead, when I'm at work during my break, I sit in a specific spot, I sit in a specific position, and I have all my stuff set up in a specific way, and that jogs my brain and says, it's time to write. The song has the same effect. With this particular story, with the boy band romance, I picked the song Bad Habits by Nerve. And so now, I kind of wish I hadn't picked that song, because now I'm going to play that song, and I'm going to think of this story. Which is not a bad thing, but at the same time, this was a song I was already obsessed with, and it probably shouldn't have been the song I chose for this particular project. Not the point. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The point is that I now associate the story with this song. And anytime this song plays, I am going to think about the story, whether I am writing, editing, or doing something else entirely. If this song comes on, I'm going to be like, so what about that boy band romance? Where are we at with it? Sorry about the wind. It is crazy. It has been crazy all week. All that to say, I've had a lot of fun with this story. I still love this story. I jokingly call it my ugly baby. And the reason for that is I think the story is good. Don't get me wrong. There are problems with it. There's probably grammar things that need to be fixed in it. The bone structure of the story is there. There was an author who was asking about people's writing process and what they do. And so like I described something that I used to do in high school that I feel like I'm doing with this book. And that is the fact that there are 3 stages of writing. Each stage might have multiple different passes, but there are 3 stages. The first stage is the first draft. Writing the bare bones. You are fixing your skeleton of your story. The second phase, or second portion, is adding muscles and ligaments to your skeleton. This might take multiple passes. But this is when you're adding stuff into the storyline, weaving things together, giving it some flesh, giving it some flavor, basically. You're adding those muscles and ligaments that will help strengthen that skeletal system and turn it into a human being eventually. Wow, it's windy enough that it's rocking the truck. Anyways, step 3. This is the final step for me. And this is the final pass. This is the polishing and editing point where you're adding flesh to your human body of a story. And you are fixing its outward appearance to make it more appealing to anyone who looks upon it. The boy band romance is in step 1. It is just a skeleton. He does not have any flesh, he does not have any flesh, he does not have any muscles, he doesn't have any ligaments. He's just hanging out, being a cool dude, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. But it does mean that there's a lot of problems, especially plot problems. I've mentioned the fact that I would change my mind about something and I didn't correct it in the first half. I just kept going from that point moving forward as if that existed the entire time. Like, it's got a lot of problems like that. Does that make the story bad? No. Like, that's the reason I call it an ugly baby. Everyone thinks their baby is beautiful. Everyone thinks their baby is beautiful. But there are some ugly babies out there. And they're just not pretty as babies. They got scrunchy little wrinkly faces. Like, not all babies are pretty. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. When that baby grows up, it will be a beautiful human being. And that's what my story will be eventually. It is not there yet. And so, like, my ugly baby has some problems. Very much so. Part of the other reason I'm still excited to write this story is the fact that I've just let it continue having no expectations. As I mentioned before, I think that was the biggest takeaway, is the fact that I have no expectations for it, and it's kept me excited to work on it. I thought this was going to be a story idea from at the beginning. I thought this was going to be a story idea where it was a one and done. I would write it, I would finish it, I would get it out of my brain, I'd be done with it. I had no intention of editing it. I had no intention of adding more storyline to it. I had no intention of polishing it up. I had no intention of publishing it. I had no intention of writing more stories. Did I, as I wrote it, set it up so that there could be more stories? Yes, I did. I have set it up in a way where we've got a love interest for the band member who is fake dating this girl. The one who kissed her, the one who started this whole shit storm mess, basically. Like, I've got a story idea for him. I have a story idea of long lost love from one of the other characters' POV. I've got a story of acceptance for the 2 band members that are dating each other, which, not a spoiler, you'd learn in the very first couple paragraphs that they're dating each other. Like, the two band members are dating each other. Like, I have set up this story to lead into future stories, which is not a bad thing, but I left it open enough that I wrapped it up in a way where I do not have to write anymore, but I could write more. Will I write more? I've kind of got ideas for them. I'm not committed to anything because I don't really want to write them. I want to focus on this particular one. I want to actually make this one better. I want to make it stronger. Once upon a time, whenever I wrote stories, when I did want to publish them, I would publish the second draft, not the first draft. I don't ever show my first draft to people, which is why it's shocking to say that I did send the first draft to both Stephanie and JC yesterday during the live stream. I was like, do you guys want to see the ugly baby so you understand what I mean by being an ugly baby? And they were like, absolutely, yes, which was not the answer I was expecting, by the way. So no one before yesterday has ever seen my ugly baby drafts. They have never seen the first draft. Usually the draft I send people is the second draft. The one I have polished up, the one I've cleaned up a little bit. And that's what I used to publish to this site called Fiction Press too. So if you ever wonder about my story ideas and like my old writing that is from like high school era, I don't think I've posted since high school actually. I think the last story I posted was in 2008, which was when I graduated. Anyways, my point is, if you ever want to see high school Sky writing, it's bad. But that's all second draft stuff. It exists out there. It is public for the eye to see. And that is on Fiction Press. And so, like, I don't know where I was going with telling you guys that. Part of me was thinking that the most publication I would do with this particular story is maybe post it to Fiction Press. Like, part of me was like, when I finish it, when I polish it up, when I get it to where I want it to be, I'll just post it to Fiction Press. And it'll be fine. It'll be a great story on there. Is that going to happen? Probably not. Probably not. But like, it's an idea. It's an idea I'm playing around with. But all of this to say, I still love this story idea. I am having a blast messing with the story idea. I have since printed it out. The other day I went to the library. I printed it out. I will be taking it with me on my North Carolina trip. I will be making lots and lots of notes. I actually today went out and bought a folder to put it in once I hole punch it. I've got paper in here to write lots of notes in. I actually have to transfer some of my notes to this paper. I have a whole entire notebook now that I'm going to be devoted to like putting this story in so I can write notes and take notes and all of the things. And I'm just like, I'm excited to work on it again. And I have not been this excited to work on something in a while. Even the stuff, like, I have been excited to work on different stories. Like, I am excited to work on the rest of the Sultry Solstices series. I loved working on the first story in the series. I loved working on Monster's Treasure, which is the first story in the Monstrous Mates series. I'm excited to work on the rest of the short stories in that particular world. Like, I am excited to write about these stories, but all of those stories come with the expectation that they will be published. And so, like, the excitement is dampened by the fact that I'm like, okay, I need to get it done by this date so I can edit it by this date, so I can get it to beta readers by this date, so I can get a cover made for it by this date, so I can get formatting done by this date, so I can get it pre-order set for this date, so I can get it published by this date. Like, all of that is running in the back of my mind anytime I think about most of my paranormal stories. Because almost every paranormal story idea I've ever had has that expectation that it will, maybe not right away, maybe not when I say it, but someday it will be published. While I do still have excitement for those stories, it is very much dampened. It's very much diminished comparatively when I examine it based next to this boy band romance story, because I do not have those same expectations. This one is purely for fun. In my head, when I was writing it, I was like, no one's ever going to see this story. It is literally just for me because it is fun to write. Yes, now I've let other people see it. I've sent it to other people. I've gotten some comments on it already. Not the point. The point is, when I was writing it, I had that mindset that it was just for me. No one was ever going to see it. Anything goes. And that's where I want to end this video, because it's way too long already. If you let go of your expectations of what you're trying to do with it in the future, how much more excited will you be to finish the project you're currently working on? Because I found that I wanted to write this story and I wanted to finish it so badly, at least the first draft. And I did. 7 days of writing, 8 days total, with one of those days having absolutely no writing at all. And I finished the first draft of this story. And I'm excited, almost a month later, to continue writing this story, to continue working on it, to continue polishing it, to wrap it up, to get it to the point where I will eventually let other people read it, more than I've already have, where I might think about publishing it. But because I didn't have that in my head from the get-go, because that's only popping in my head now after the first draft is done, and that's the key right there. None of those ideas popped in my head until after the first draft was done. How much more writing could you do if you dropped those expectations? How much more writing could I do if I stop thinking about the fact that the stories I want to write under S.T. Haggis? How much further could I get with the Sultry Solstice series? I have 7 books planned, 7 short stories planned. They're all about to be 15,000 words long. And that's the other thing. With this boy band romance, I didn't worry about word count. Each chapter was going to be as long as it was. There was going to be as many chapters as it was going to be. I had no expectations of whether it was going to be a short story, novella. And so, like, in the back of my mind, I am constantly thinking about, okay, I need to tighten up this prose. I need to tighten up the story. There's too many characters. I need to drop some of these characters. There's too much stuff going on. All of that is constantly on my mind. And if I let go of those expectations, what will the stories be like? If you let go of your expectations with the stories you write, if you forget about the fact that you want to publish them someday, if you forget about the fact that you're worrying about word count on different chapters, you're worrying about word count total, if you forget about worrying about the research, how much more will you get done on your projects? Just some food for thought. Just some stuff I've been thinking about. Just some stuff that moving forward I'm going to try to continue thinking about. because I have too many story ideas that I want to write that I don't want to waste time worrying about all these things anymore. I want to be able to start finishing more projects. I want this high that I've been riding with this particular project that I mentioned at the very beginning. I want this high with every story that I write, whether I publish it or not. It shouldn't take telling myself that I don't want to publish this story in order for me to feel this kind of excitement, to feel this high. I should feel this way about every story I write, regardless. And I want that feeling back. This has been a very long video, very rambly video, but I hope it gave you guys some things to think about with your own writing. Gave you the experience I've had with this particular story, just this story. I am going to be trying some things moving forward based on this experiment, and yeah, I will probably have another video where I talk about those. I don't know how it's going to look because I am jumping around different projects right now. Before I go on my trip, I haven't committed to anything, and like on the trip itself, I've committed to beta reading a story from JC, as well as like taking notes on the boy romance story. So like I don't know what my plans are moving forward other than that. But yeah, that is all of my thoughts lately, and I guess I will let you go, and I will talk to you guys in another video. Let me know what your thoughts are about this whole situation. And do you guys have ugly baby drafts, or do you guys let people see your ugly baby drafts? Let me know. I'm curious. I'm nosy. Tell me all the things. What was the last story idea that you wrote from beginning to end that you were super excited for? That when you finished it, you were still riding that high days, weeks, months later? Let me know in the comments below. If you've made it this far in the video, feel free to leave me any of your favorite emojis. Give me 3 of your favorite emojis that you like to use, or that you like seeing when other people use them. And I will see you all in my next video, whenever that is, because I don't know when it's going to be. Bye, Dragonlings.